Hey everybody, this is Bo Sanders and I am back to talk to you about part 3 of why things seem so bad right now. In part 1, there was a video for that. We covered the globalization, consumerism, and pluralism. In part 2, we talked about the fragmented and fractured nature of our current society in the 21st century. And today in part 3, we want to talk about why there is no neutral anymore. So one of the things we have to address is the fact that our communities are living in closer proximity to each other, so we have greater access to people of different perspectives, different narratives, cultures, traditions than ever before. And even if that's only on social media, it matters, because no matter what it is, you cannot assume anything anymore. Even if it's Supreme Court decisions about baking cakes for same-sex couples, there is so many layers of nuance about how that decision was made, and kicking it back to the courts in Colorado, to the states, or kicking it down the road because they want a different case to rule on. You can't assume anything anymore. Nothing is black and white. Nothing is what it seems. And so you have to exhibit a little bit of humility and a little bit of caution. And it makes for difficult times for those who are used to being able to assume certain things. So we've had a big change over the last 70 years. And the loss of this homogenous majority, if you want to call it this normal, is a huge loss, because even though it was probably a mental fiction the whole time, or what those of us in the field call a social imaginary, the simple fact is that the presence of that assumption allowed one to view any deviation or variation as suspect. And you can't do that anymore, because things are so fragmented and so fractured, and there are so many remnants of so many different moralities and narratives in play, that one has to be a little bit curious and a little bit sensitive to navigate through and really get down to the heart behind something. And there's a listening posture that doesn't presume you already know ahead of time what the other person is going to say. So this is why we practice in conversational church or conversational community. So one of the things that you have to begin with right off the bat is the fact that our human access to truth, even if there is such a thing as universal truth, which is disputed, we wouldn't have access to that. What we have access to is truth in 3 different ways: partial, provisional, and perspectival. I get this from Merrill Westphal. Partial means we don't have the whole story. We never have all of the information. Provisional, in that we can know something now, but it may change later on, or our perspective may change, or the consequences or something may change. So even when we put our foot down or draw a line in the sand, it is provisional. It can be and will probably be changed later. And the last thing is perspectival, that I can only see the truth or from where I stand, and that it may look very different from you, from people in different eras, from people from different backgrounds, and people coming from different perspectives, people in different parts of the world or in different regions of the country. But I can only see it from where I stand, which is why I actually need you, which is the power of social media, is to compare notes with people and to see how it looks from their perspective. Once you have accepted that this is our human access to truth, then you say, well, what are the implications for meaning then? How do we know something's meaningful? And so in subsequent 3 ways, that tripartite formula is that meaning is mediated, it is located, and it is contested. This is the part that is exhausting to some people. And they wish you could just assume certain things, and this means that. But we don't live in that era anymore, and you cannot take that as your starting point. Meaning is mediated because language itself and the mental frameworks that we have inherited act upon us, that we are both agents who act, but we have been acted upon by our language, mental frameworks, history, experience, tradition, and the narratives that have influenced us. So we are formed and informed by those things. Meaning is located, meaning that there isn't anything that can be assumed across the board. There's no universal, right? Things are located. They come from a specific context. Things don't happen in a vacuum. And so that social location means that it's important to identify and attend to, account for where somebody is coming from, because location matters, right? That's the perspectival. And the last thing is contested. And this is the unfortunate thing, and why there is no neutral anymore, is that meaning is mediated socially. It is socially constructed or communally constructed, in that depending on your nationality, your cultural background, your religious perspective, your upbringing, your family origin, all of those things come together, and as we as a social society, a cultural fabric, the interweaving of all of these different perspectives, that is how meaning is constructed. It's in a contested arena. If you are frustrated by that, by the way, it would explain why there's so much agitation, especially by people like who have traditionally, their perspective could be assumed and that they could just begin there. And so having to earn a hearing in the arena of public opinion is sometimes frustrating, because they've never had to do that before. So one of the implications of this understanding of meaning is that you can't just assume a position. We live in the age of the cynic. I've done a video about this. I've written on this before. I get it from my friend Tad DeLay. The age of the cynic. So you can't just poo-poo on another person's perspective without providing an alternative perspective or program, orientation, project. It's not sufficient to poke holes in or take shots at someone else's view or perspective, because we are working for the common good. It's not enough to simply say in an isolated silo, in a compartment, to segregate or buffer from everyone else, to say, this is my perspective, and don't come near me and don't touch me, just let me alone. I won't judge you, you don't judge me, and then we live this. Because as those who have been responding to grace, the grace of Christ, the gospel of the good news, we are working for the common good. Our culture is so fractured that one actually has to justify making a claim in the public arena that nothing gets off scot-free. There is no idea that gets a free ride. There is no position that is exempt from examination. This is why there is no neutral anymore. So, this is true in issues of economy, in politics, military, ecology, morals, religion, civility, marriage, gender, sexuality, occupations, and trades are a few of the examples that I thought of in which this is true. In almost every area of life, this reality that there is no neutral anymore has deeply influenced how, from generation to generation, from community to community, from religion to religion, across the board, why there is so much division, animosity, and conflict. My proposal is that the sooner we embrace this reality and conceptualize our participation in our culture and society, the sooner and the better we will be at developing new tools with which to navigate and construct a fabric of society that works for us and for the majority, the most people that we can, so that we can flourish together. That would be my hope. Last thing, when we talk about this fragmented and fractured society, it is not enough for us to be resigned, for resignation to set in, and for us to isolate ourselves. we are called to something greater and to tell a story, a bigger story, and invite people to live up into the bigger story. Let me know what you think about this. I would love some feedback.